Hello again, friends, and welcome to another segment here on Doc G's Wine and Spirits Review. So, as you can see, we are outdoor today. We're here in the heart of spring, slowly rumbling toward my favorite season of the year, summer. But right now, we are in the heart of spring, as you can see by the beautiful weather here today, and by the array of wonderful friends that I have here on the table for you. So as you might take a little guess, today's segment is going to be all about pink wine, rosé wine, one of my favorite wine styles of all the wines that I drink. Now, I want to remind you, this is kind of a repeat. I checked in my files and my video files, and about 2 years ago, almost maybe a couple weeks apart, one of my first early segments in June of 2021 was on rosé. So I don't want to be repetitive. You can go back and find that segment. It's only about 10-12 minutes long, and I got really into a lot of detail about how rosé wine was made. I'll summarize that a little bit today as we go through the wine here. But my purpose today is to expand upon the technical knowledge of rosé and show you just how diverse rosé wine is in terms of terroir, and where you can get it and source it and have all different kinds of styles. So that's what today's focus is going to be. And I have quite a few wines on the table. I only plan to open one of them, and that is the one you see here to my right, and that is a nice sparkling. So let me continue to talk and get ready to toast this little get-together with a little bit of sparkling rosé. So you can see there's quite a few. I've counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different rosés. Even though it's rosé wine, if I tried to even drink 2 of those, I think I would be, headed for that pool to maybe take a break. Oh, what a wonderful sound. So let me pour. See the wonderful color. Set that down for you. And before my palate and my lips get too dry, let me take a sip and say cheers and welcome to today's segment on rosé wine. Goodbye. I don't even feel like talking after sipping that. But seriously, rosé wine is one of the most, and I said this a couple of years ago, one of the most versatile food wines that you'll be able to find anywhere between whites and reds. They pair with just about everything, from salty food to cheeses to chicken to turkey. If you want to go crazy and have it with a steak, you could even get away with it then. But it is the quintessential outdoor wine. It's a wine that goes well with picnics, with sitting by the pool, as you can see here in the background. And as I always say, with just putting it in a glass and saying, I feel like sipping some wine. So the only wine that I'm really going to talk about in length is this very first one. And you can see on the bottle, it's called Sauvage. If you were following me earlier this month, we were in New Mexico for a stretch, and this wine was one of the wines that I ordered after a tasting at the Rosé winery in Santa Fe. And it finally made its way home, and I bought a couple, so I opened one today to celebrate our little get-together. So this is an American-sourced wine. Rosé does not grow all its grapes in New Mexico. It does source some of its grapes. So the Pinot Noir in this bottle, more than likely, they source a lot from Washington State. Came from there. There may have been a little bit of Pinot Noir sourced in New Mexico. I can tell you, it really does not matter because this wine is absolutely wonderful. So let me talk about it just a little bit before we get into talking about each one of the rosés that I have here today. A little melon, lemon, strawberry, berry, all the things that you would expect from a Pinot Noir bubbly. And this one is also a zero dosage, as they call it, which means basically it is bone dry. There is no residual sugar in this whatsoever, and that is just a wine style that I absolutely love. It goes wonderful here with this glorious weather here today. So I'm going to continue to sip that, pour that, However, it's going to disappear from the scene unless unless I need more and I get thirstier. So the wines that I assembled today are all of these. I didn't go out and buy any of these for this spot. These come straight from my cellar. For those of you that have been following me for a while, I have a pretty extensive cellar. I usually keep about anywhere from 2 to 3 cases of rosé on hand. I try to buy it early in the season. I don't let it sit for more than about 2 years because they tend to go a little bit flat. So all of these are probably, let me look at the labels, they're 2021s and later. So all my 2020 rosés have, as they say, been disposed of. So the reason that I put all of these wines here today was not to drink them, but was to really give you an idea. And I talked more about the wine rosé styles today. I'll try to weave that into the wines as I talk about them today. So with that said, let me start with 2 from France. And I pull these out for a very specific reason. These 2 wines, as you can look at the difference in the color there. So one of these is called Bandol. As you know from my different talks, whenever you talk about French wine, you have to know the location. French don't talk about Chardonnay, they talk about Burgundy, Bourgogne. They don't talk about Cab Franc, they talk about Chinon. So you have to know the place. So these 2 wines are named by their place. This first one is Bandol, and Bandol comes from the southeast corner of Spain, down in the Côte du Rhône area, and this generally has the typical Côte du Rhône grapes. I didn't even read it, but I'm sure there's some Grenache in this one. I'm sure there's probably some Mourvedre. There's probably a little bit of Cinsault. It's definitely a blend. It is not a single varietal grape. And look at the beautiful pink salmon hue that you get on this. Now, this is a wine that when you drink it, it's going to be a little bit more round. It's a bigger rosé. It's not quite as brisk and acidic as this one. Because remember, as I told you in the spot in 2021, rosé wine is essentially red wine whose juice has been allowed minimal skin contact. There's no such thing as a rosé grape. Just to repeat myself, any juice from any wine runs clear. The way it gets its color is through skin contact. And the skin contact for a rosé, obviously they bleed the grapes off quickly. They'll just rest in the skins somewhere 2 to 24 hours, maybe a little bit more. And you have yourself a rosé, and then that juice is headed off to the fermentation process, just like any other regular wine. So most of these rosés that I have here today will come in at 12 or 13% ABV, alcohol by volume, which means they're dry. I don't have the residual sugar statistics, but let me trust you on the palate, these wines will drink dry. They won't be anything like white Zinfandel, which tends to be a little bit sweeter, which is actually probably they add a little extra sugar to make that wine sweeter. Not my style. I said that 2 years ago. That has not changed. So that's one example. If you get into your wine and liquor shop, wherever you may be, look for a Bandol. They're a little bit more expensive, but they are well worth the effort. So let's get the Bandol out of the way, and let's move on to Tavel, or Tavel. This is one that I get regularly at Total Wine, but you can get Tavel every once in a while. PA Wine and Spirits will have it. Fortunately, on the back of this bottle, it tells me exactly what's in here. There's 50% Grenache, 15% Mourvedre, 13% Claret, 12% Picpoul, and 10% Syrah. All Rhone-style grapes. This city, Tavel, is located in the Rhone Valley, more to the south. And look at the wonderful color. It is almost drinks like a rosato, or a deeper kind of not sparkling, a deeper kind of rosé wine. So I would say to you, don't be fooled by the dark color. When you have this, it will be refreshing. Again, because of the color, it will be a little fuller. It's got a wonderful, wonderful, I'm just going to read from the bottle and what they tell you. I always go to the wine. It has red fruits, mineral aromas, It's perfect as a whole meal with whole meals, Provençal cuisine, duck or lamb. They even say you could have this with lamb. That's how big this is as a rosé. And any other kind of, you might want to pair this with a little Thai food, or something that you might have a little bit more spice on it during the summer, spring and summer months. You could have this year round. I do want to editorialize a little bit. You can have rosé all year. I tend to back off of them in the colder weather to break out my reds, which I tend not to really drink a lot of in the summer because their alcohol is kicked up and they tend to make you a little clammy faster than you might want to. So let's move the Tavel out of the way. So that's France. And my goal here is to show you the variety globally of where you can find rosé wine. So let me go now to the rest of them. Well, I have one more that's out of the United States. And that's a little one here. This is from the Côte Basque. Now, if you know anything about your geography, the Basque region is a little area in the northern and eastern part of Spain in the Pyrenees along the French border. And you can go look up Basque Country, Basque. In Spanish, it's Basco. In French, it's Le Basque, Le Pays Basque. And it's kind of a world unto its own. And the grapes in here are really different grapes that come from the Basque region that are sourced only there. That's not important. I only want to tell you that if you can find yourself a Basque, either white or wine, a white or rosé, please do yourself a favor and snatch it up. This one is 11.5 ABV, so it's, even though it's not sweet. It actually has a little bit of effervescence on it, and it got a 91 here from somebody, so I can tell you I've already had a bottle of this. It is fantastic. So that's from Spain/France. So let's come back to the United States now, but before we do that, let Doc G wet his whistle a little bit here. I just love to hear that sound when I pour the wine. So now I'd like to go to regions that are closer to me first. And the first one that I have here, look at the beautiful color here. This is a rosé of Cabernet Franc. And one of the great things about rosé, you'll get to sample a lot of red wine grapes that you might not really want to drink as a red wine, but as a rosé, you may be convinced that they're good. This is from one of my favorite wineries in the Finger Lakes on Keuka Lake. I just joined their wine club called Domaine Le Sour, a French family, very steeped in winemaking that found a great piece of land and different vineyard sourcing in the Finger Lakes of the United States in New York, in upper New York State. This one is a typical beautiful strawberry, dark fruit. Even though I say dark fruit, it's got a little bit of a body, as you can tell by the color, and it's going to be a little bit, I'll just say berry. Let's just say mixed berry for most of these rosés. And as I said back in the spot 2 years ago, when I tell you mixed berries or any fruit, it's not like you just crunch that fruit in your mouth. It's very subtle and underplayed. But grapes chemically do have some of the same chemical compounds as a lot of the fruit that they're named after. So it's not surprising that in the fermentation process, these grapes take on the flavors of other fruits. And they basically are just great without being compared to other fruits. You don't have to compare it to anything except what it makes you feel when you take a sip. So let's say goodbye to the Cab Franc from New York State, and let's go to another great wine that I picked up in my trails. Last fall, a little story, my wine group and I, we all took a little trek to the Northern Virginia Wine, AVA, around not Charlottesville, excuse me. We stayed in Winchester, Virginia. We were in Loudoun County. We were right in the heart of near Bull Run, that whole area in north central Virginia. And we went to a winery called Bro. And this wine was a lucky find because they don't grow enough every year to be able to harvest this wine. but look at the difference in the color. Very, very light in comparison to the other one. This is a 100% Nebbiolo Rosé. And if you know anything about Nebbiolo, let me tell you, it's the base grape. It is what is Barolo. When you find a Barolo, which are very expensive, long-aged wines that will last decades in the barrel, and then in the bottle once you bottle them. They're generally so rough they're not ready to drink, at least for 5 to 10 years. But this wine is Nebbiolo, bled off, fermented, and made as a rosé. This was one of the best rosés I think I drank last year. I had some at the winery. I only had 2. Whenever I really like a wine, I'm always like, do I really want to drink it? Because I know I'm not going to get any more. Well, I've got 2 of these. I can guarantee you I'm going to have one sometime this summer or spring, and I'll probably save the other one so I can have that same excitement again at another time. So that's one, and the reason I wanted to tell you, this is from Virginia. So now we've got France, we've got Spain, we've got Virginia, we've got upstate New York, and for me, let's bring it on home. This one is right here from Pennsylvania. This one is from one of my favorite Pennsylvania wineries. One of, there are others that I like as well. This one is called Galen Glen. They are in Lehigh County, just over the ridge up Route 476. They're kind of in the middle of nowhere, which is where most wineries are when you really get down to it. But this is a wonderful rosé that they blend from some Chamberson grapes, some Zweigelt, and it is a wonderful rosé that drinks just like any of the others. And look at the difference in color. Every one of these rosés is subject to the winemaker's decision on how long they want to bleed it and the type of grapes that they use in the process. So that's Galen Glen Rosé. Let's move Galen Glen out of the way as we approach our end here. And let's go next to one of my favorite rosés of all time. Is this one from the Central Coast of California. And this one is from one of my favorite wineries of all time, Bonnie Doon Vineyard. And this is the one they call the Vin Gris. The Vin Gris, the cigar. It is a pink wine, and it's made from the lightest pressings of grapes. Why is it called? I'm going to tell you a little story about this bottle here. As you take a look at the picture. The winemaker here is Randall Graham. He's one of a renowned winemaker who's approaching retirement. But it's kind of a play on what the French did in 1954. The French declared that Châteauneuf-du-Pape is a region in France. They adopted an ordinance prohibiting the landing of spacecraft in local vineyards. I kid you not. This is a real story. Look it up. So, and they call the UFOs in France, we call them UFOs, they call them cigars, the shape of a cigar, if you will. And so Randall likes to poke fun at them through this wine, and that's why he made that great label there. However, I would tell you that this rosé that he has in the bottle here is done in the Côte du Rhône style, because Randall is a big Côte du Rhône fan and a big bottler of Côte du Rhône grapes, which means there's Grenache, Sancerre, Mourvedre, maybe a little Peak Pool. I don't have the breakdown of the wine on the back of this bottle. It matters not. It is. I've been drinking this rosé for probably 7 or 8 years now, if not longer. And if you look at you see the UFO head on the cap. Maybe you can't see it yet. There's the little alien on the cap. He is such a practical joker. I had the pleasure of actually meeting him a couple years ago at one of his wine dinners. I actually flew out to California with my wife, and we met up a friend out there and had a great wine dinner in the middle of San Luis Obispo winery out there in the middle of nowhere. But it was a fantastic time. And then finally, the last rosé that I want to share with you is probably one of the most recent ones that I bought, and that here is a Garnacha Rosado. And this is from Vara. If you remember, I just did a spot on site with the wine educator at Vara. This bottle of wine came home. beautiful color. It's Grenache. It's Grenache Rosé. And they have an agreement with some vintners in Spain. So these grapes are Spanish, even though they're fermented and processed in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm sure I did sample it when I was there. This wine is fantastic. Again, the typical profile of your rosé wines. So there you have it, friends. Rosé round 2. A little bit different spin, a little bit more information for you. And I hope my goal is really to have you search for some rosés as the spring unwinds. And they're great, obviously, all summer long. So go out. The PA Wine and Spirits has made a concerted effort to up their game, as you would say, and put more rosés on the shelves. You can get good rosés, frankly, if you find the right ones, in your local supermarket. Wegmans has a wonderful selection of rosés, and no matter what state you're in or area, I know that all of you are hailing from Pennsylvania, just get to your local wine and spirits place and look for good rosé, and talk to the people in the store, and use what I shared with you as guidelines for picking up some great rosés that I'm sure you will fall in love with as time goes along. And you can keep your budget really simple. To get a good rosé, you're looking at 12, 13, 14, and you want to stop at 20. Don't spend much more than 20 for a good rosé unless you know it's good and you've had it before. So with that note, just a little public service announcement. For those of you who've recently joined me, and for those of you who have been along for the ride, believe it or not, next week, and I'm not going to tell you the day because I'm going to surprise you, will mark the 2-year anniversary of Doc G's Wine and Spirits Review. Started during the dark days of COVID, and now here we are, out in the light of day and enjoying life. So on that note, we'll have a little bit of a special segment next week. Cheers, and we'll see you next week.